I never imagined I'd end up here blind, alone, living in a single room with nothing but memories. My husband is gone. My son hasn't called in years. His wife told me to stop being so clingy when I asked them to come to my husband's funeral. Now, as I sit in this darkness, I can't help but wonder, where did it all go wrong? My grandson found me by accident last week, doing volunteer work in this very building. He didn't even know I was alive. But let me start from the beginning, when life was full of hope and I believed love could conquer anything. I was 26 when I met him. Back then, I was just a young woman, working in a textile factory in Pennsylvania, trying to make ends meet. My family didn't have much, we never did. I'd been working since I was 16, watching my parents struggle under the weight of poverty, promising myself that I'd work hard enough to build a better life. The factory was loud, hot, and relentless. Day after day, the same routine, the whir of machines, the smell of cotton and oil, the ache in my back by the end of each shift. But I didn't complain. This was my path forward, and I walked it with determination. Then, one autumn morning, a new worker arrived. His name was Michael Thompson. He was around my age, maybe a year or two older, with kind eyes and a quiet confidence that drew people to him. At first, we barely spoke, just polite nods in passing, the occasional "good morning" exchanged over the noise of the looms. But when you work alongside someone day in and day out, walls eventually come down. We started talking during lunch breaks, small conversations at first, about work, about the weather, about nothing and everything. I learned that Michael came from circumstances similar to mine. His family had struggled too. He'd left school early to help support them, taking whatever work he could find. What struck me most was his attitude. Despite the grueling hours and meager pay, Michael never complained. He faced each day with a smile, treating everyone with respect and kindness. There was something magnetic about his optimism, his unwavering work ethic. Slowly, without really noticing when it happened, I found myself looking forward to seeing him each day. Our friendship deepened naturally. After work, we'd sometimes walk through the park near the factory, talking about our dreams and fears. Michael wanted to save enough money to maybe start a small business someday. Nothing grand, just something of his own. I wanted stability, a home, a family that wouldn't have to worry about where the next meal was coming from. One evening, as the sun set over the park and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Michael took my hand. "Alexis," he said, his voice soft but steady, "I know we don't have much, but I promise you if you'll have me, I'll work every day for the rest of my life to make you happy." My heart swelled. I squeezed his hand back, tears pricking my eyes. "That's all I've ever wanted, Michael. Someone who'll stand beside me, no matter what." We dated for about a year before deciding to get married. Our parents were worried. At first, we were both so young, with so little to our names. But they saw how much we loved each other, how committed we were to building a life together. Eventually, they gave us their blessing. The wedding was simple. We couldn't afford anything elaborate, no fancy venue, no expensive dress. But it was perfect. Our families gathered in a small community church, along with friends and coworkers from the factory. I wore a modest white dress that my mother had altered from her own wedding gown. Michael wore his only suit, freshly pressed for the occasion, as we stood before everyone we loved, promising to honor and cherish each other through whatever life brought our way. I felt a peace I'd never known before. This was it. This was the beginning of our real life together. Those early years of marriage were some of the happiest of my life. We rented a tiny apartment, just one bedroom, a cramped kitchen, and a bathroom that barely fit both of us, but it was ours. Every morning, we'd wake before dawn, share a simple breakfast, and walk to the factory together, hand in hand. Money was always tight. There were weeks when we had to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. But we made it work. We leaned on each other, found joy in the smallest things: a shared meal after a long day, a walk under the stars, the warmth of lying side by side in our narrow bed, knowing we had each other. About a year into our marriage, I discovered I was pregnant. I'll never forget the moment I told Michael. We were sitting at our small kitchen table after dinner, and I just blurted it out. "Michael, I'm going to have a baby." He froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Then his face broke into the biggest smile I'd ever seen. He jumped up, rushed around the table, and pulled me into his arms, spinning me around despite my protests. "We're going to be parents," he kept saying, laughing and crying at the same time. "Alexis, we're going to have a baby." Before we continue, if you're finding Alexis's story touching, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. Your support helps us share more stories that matter. Thank you. The pregnancy wasn't easy. Morning sickness hit me hard those first few months. I kept working at the factory as long as I could, but eventually, the physical demands became too much. Michael took on extra shifts whenever possible, determined to make up for my lost income. When our son was born, we named him Daniel. Everything changed. The moment the nurse placed him in my arms, I understood what people meant when they talked about unconditional love. This tiny, perfect human was ours. Michael stood beside the hospital bed, tears streaming down his face, gently touching Daniel's tiny fingers. "He looks just like you," I whispered. "He has your eyes," Michael replied, his voice thick with emotion. Those early days with Daniel were exhausting. He cried constantly, day and night, seemed to blend together in an endless cycle of feeding, changing, soothing, and trying to catch a few moments of sleep whenever possible. But even in the exhaustion, there was joy. Watching Michael hold our son, seeing the fierce love in his eyes, made every sleepless night worthwhile. Michael's mother, Ruth, was a godsend during those early months. She'd come over several times a week, helping with Daniel while I recovered. "You rest, dear," she'd say, gently taking Daniel from my arms. "Let Grandma handle this little one for a while." I was so grateful for her presence. Without her help, I don't know how I would have managed. She treated me like her own daughter, with such warmth and kindness that it brought tears to my eyes. Daniel grew quickly. Before we knew it, he was crawling, then walking, then running around our small apartment with boundless energy. He was a beautiful child. I'm not just saying that because I'm his mother. He really was striking, with his father's strong features and bright, intelligent eyes. Neighbors would stop us on the street to comment on how handsome our son was. At the park, other children gravitated toward him. Even his preschool teachers remarked on his charm and natural charisma. "Daniel's going to be a heartbreaker when he grows up," one teacher told me with a knowing smile. I laughed it off at the time, but looking back now, maybe I should have paid more attention to what she was really saying. Daniel excelled at everything. He was athletic, popular, smart enough to do well in school without much effort. As he grew into adolescence, his good looks became even more pronounced. Girls called our house constantly. I'd answer the phone to hear giggling voices asking if Daniel was home. "Honey, it's for you," I'd call out, shaking my head with a mixture of amusement and concern. Michael would chuckle. "That's our boy. Popular with the ladies, just like his old man." "Just like his old man?" I'd tease. "Michael Thompson, you barely talked to anyone before you met me." We'd laugh together, Still so much in love, even after all those years. When Daniel turned 18, he graduated high school and immediately found work. We'd always encouraged him to go to college, but he insisted he wanted to start earning money right away. "I don't want you guys struggling to pay for my education," he said. "I'll work, save up, maybe go to school later." I was proud of his independence, his desire to contribute. He found a job at a local company, nothing glamorous, but steady work with decent pay. For a while, everything seemed perfect. But then Daniel met a girl. Within weeks, he announced he was moving in with her. "Moving in?" I repeated, stunned. "Daniel, you barely know this girl." "You're only 18. "Mom, I know what I'm doing," he insisted. "I love her." My heart sank. "Love? Sweetheart, love takes time. You can't just—" I knew what I wanted. He cut me off. "Stop trying to control my life." That was the first time I felt the distance growing between us. The first time I realized my little boy was slipping away from me. The relationship with that first girl didn't last long, maybe 2 months before they broke up. I thought maybe Daniel had learned his lesson, that he'd slow down and think more carefully about his choices. I was wrong. Almost immediately, he moved in with another girl. Then another. Throughout his 20s, Daniel cycled through relationships like changing clothes. He'd meet someone, declare it was serious, move in together, then break up a few months later and move on to the next one. Each time my heart broke a little more. "Daniel, honey, why don't you slow down?" I'd plead during our increasingly rare phone calls. "Take time to really get to know someone before committing." "You don't understand, Mom. Times have changed. This is just how people date now." But it wasn't just dating, it was a pattern of instability that worried me deeply. Daniel changed jobs as frequently as he changed girlfriends, never staying anywhere long enough to build a real career. He was always chasing something new, something exciting, never satisfied with what he had. Michael tried to talk to him too. "Son, you need to think about your future. Settle down, build something lasting." But Daniel would just shrug off our concerns. "I'm fine, Dad. Stop worrying so much." By his late 30s, I'd almost given up hope that Daniel would ever find stability. Then he announced he was getting married. I wanted to feel excited, but I couldn't shake my doubts. After all the failed relationships, all the instability, could Daniel really commit to one person? The wedding was nice, more elaborate than ours had been, thanks to his fiancé's family's money. I smiled and played the proud mother, but inside, I was terrified that this was just another chapter in Daniel's pattern of fleeting commitments. My fears proved justified. 3 years after the wedding, Daniel called to tell us he was getting divorced. "She was too controlling," he explained, "always nagging me about everything." I couldn't take it anymore. I bit my tongue, wanting to say that maybe the problem wasn't just her, that maybe Daniel needed to look at his own behavior. But I stayed silent, not wanting to push him further away. What I learned later from relatives who kept in better touch with Daniel than I did was that he'd been seeing someone else while still married. That's who he moved in with as soon as the divorce was finalized. Again! The pattern repeated again. "Michael," I said to my husband one night, lying awake in the darkness, "where did we go wrong? How did we raise a son who treats relationships, treats people like they're disposable?" Michael squeezed my hand. "We did our best, Alexis. Sometimes kids make their own choices, no matter how we raise them." When Daniel announced his plans to remarry to a woman named Jessica, whom we'd barely met, I felt nothing but dread. I didn't trust this marriage any more than I'd trusted the first one. But what could I do? He was my son. I had to support him, even if I didn't agree with his choices. Jessica seemed nice enough the few times we met her, though there was something cold about her smile, something calculating in her eyes. But I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was projecting my fears onto her unfairly. "Welcome to the family," I said, embracing her at their small wedding ceremony. She returned the hug limply, already pulling away to greet other guests. That should have been my first clue about what was to come. After the wedding, Daniel's calls became even less frequent. When I did manage to reach him, he was always rushed, always making excuses about why they couldn't visit. "Work's crazy right now, Mom. Jessica's not feeling well. Maybe next month." Next month never came. I tried not to take it personally. Young couples need space to build their lives together, I told myself. They'll come around eventually. But the distance kept growing. Months would pass between calls. When I phoned their house, Jessica would answer with barely concealed irritation in her voice. "Oh, Alexis. Hi. Daniel's not home right now. Could you have him call me back?" "Sure." But he never did. Michael noticed too. "Something's not right there," he'd say, shaking his head. "That woman doesn't want Daniel having anything to do with his own family." I wanted to believe he was wrong, that we were reading too much into it. But deep down, I knew Michael was right. Jessica was pulling our son away from us, and Daniel was letting it happen. Then came the worst day of my life. Michael collapsed at work, a massive heart attack. By the time the ambulance got him to the hospital, it was too late. The love of my life, my partner for over 40 years, was gone. I was in shock. The doctors were talking to me, explaining what had happened, but I couldn't process their words. All I could think was, Michael is dead. My Michael is gone. The funeral arrangements passed in a blur. I went through the motions, choosing a casket, selecting flowers, writing an obituary, while feeling like I was watching myself from outside my body. This couldn't be real. Michael couldn't be gone. I called Daniel immediately, of course. The phone rang and rang before going to voicemail. I left a message, my voice breaking. "Daniel, it's Mom. Your father. Your father's had a heart attack." "He's gone, honey. Please call me back." Hours passed. No response. I called again and again. Finally, someone answered, but it was Jessica. "Hello?" Her voice was flat, annoyed. "Jessica, it's Alexis. I've been trying to reach Daniel. His father passed away, and I need—" "Yeah, I got your messages." I waited for her to continue, to express condolences, to put Daniel on the phone. Silence. "Can I speak to Daniel, please? I need to tell him about the funeral arrangements." "Look, Alexis, what do you want me to do about it?" My blood ran cold. "Excuse me? You heard me. Michael's death, that's not really our problem, is it? I mean, I never even met the guy. And Daniel hasn't talked to him in years." "Jessica, that's his father. He needs to come to the funeral. We need to—" "The funeral?" She laughed, actually laughed. "Why would we come to that? I don't even know these people. And Daniel has no interest in going. He told me his childhood was miserable, that you two were terrible parents. So no, we won't be attending." Tears streamed down my face. "Please, just let me talk to Daniel. Daniel doesn't want to talk to you. He asked me to tell you to stop calling. You're being clingy and weird, and it's making him uncomfortable. Just have your funeral and move on with your life. Leave us alone." The line went dead. I stood there, phone in my hand, unable to move, unable to think. My husband was dead, and my son, my only child, refused to even acknowledge it. Refused to come say goodbye to his own father. The funeral was small. Some of Michael's coworkers came. A few neighbors, some distant relatives. But Daniel's absence was all I could focus on. Every time the door opened, I'd look up, hoping against hope that he'd changed his mind, that he'd come. He never did. I sat in the front pew, staring at Michael's casket, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. People offered condolences, squeezed my hand, told me how sorry they were, but their words couldn't reach me through the fog of grief and betrayal. My son didn't come to his own father's funeral. What kind of person does that? After the funeral, walking back to my car, I wasn't paying attention to where I was going. The winter sidewalks were icy, and I slipped. I fell hard, my head hitting the ground near my eyes. The pain was immediate and intense, but the physical hurt was nothing compared to the emotional agony I was already in. Someone called an ambulance. I remember being loaded into it, remember the paramedics' concerned faces hovering above me, remember thinking, maybe it would be easier if I just didn't wake up. But I did wake up in a hospital bed, my head wrapped in bandages, pain radiating through my skull. "Mrs. Thompson?" A doctor stood beside my bed, his expression grave. "You've suffered severe trauma to both eyes. There's significant damage to your retinas and optic nerves. We're going to need to operate immediately, but I have to be honest with you, even with surgery, there's a substantial risk of permanent vision loss." Going blind. I was going blind. I tried to call Daniel from the hospital. Jessica answered again. "What now, Alexis?" "I've been in an accident. I'm in the hospital, and the doctors say I might lose my vision. I need Daniel." "Oh my God, seriously? You're really milking this whole poor me thing, aren't you? You fell down." "Big deal. People fall all the time. Jessica, please. Look, we're busy. We have our own lives. We can't drop everything every time you have some little drama. You'll be fine. Stop being so needy." She hung up. I lay in that hospital bed, tears running down my face, soaking into the bandages, wrapped around my eyes, and realized the horrible truth: my son had abandoned me. Completely, totally abandoned me. The surgery didn't save my vision. When they removed the bandages weeks later, all I saw was darkness, some vague shapes, maybe shadows and light, but nothing clear, nothing that would let me live independently. I was blind. The hospital bills were astronomical. I had some savings, but not nearly enough. I applied for assistance, moved out of the apartment. Michael and I had shared I couldn't afford it anymore, and ended up in a single room in a low-income building. One room. That's what my life had become. One room, filled with darkness, containing nothing but a bed, a small table, a few pieces of clothing, and memories of better days. I thought about ending it. I really did. What was the point of continuing? My husband was dead. My son wanted nothing to do with me. I was blind, poor, and utterly alone. Some nights I'd lie awake contemplating how I might do it, wondering if anyone would even notice I was gone. But something kept me here. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was the faint hope that somehow, someday, things might get better. Or maybe I just didn't have the courage to follow through. The social services worker who helped me get into the building also connected me with meal delivery programs and a support group for seniors. I started attending, mostly because I had nothing else to do. The other people there had their own stories of loss and abandonment. We'd sit together, sharing our pain, offering what comfort we could. It helped, but not enough. Nothing could fill the Daniel-shaped hole in my heart. Then one day, I don't even remember exactly when volunteers came to the building. Young people from some community service program, cooking meals, cleaning, spending time with us, forgotten seniors. As one of them cheerfully put it, one of them helped me to a chair in the common room. His voice was young, kind, patient, as he described the meal they'd prepared. Something about his voice struck me as familiar, but I couldn't place it. "What's your name, young man?" I asked. "I'm Marcus, ma'am." "Marcus Thompson." My breath caught. "Thompson, do you know a Daniel Thompson?" A pause. "Yes, ma'am. Daniel Thompson is my father." Time stopped. "My grandson." This was my grandson, the child I'd never met, never even heard Daniel mention. "Marcus," I whispered, reaching out. "Marcus, I'm Alexis. I'm your grandmother." I heard his sharp intake of breath. Then I felt his hands grasp mine, holding tight. "Grandma? Oh my God." "Grandma, I didn't know. Dad never said. I didn't know you lived here. I didn't know any of this." We both cried. This stranger, who was my own blood, who I'd never had the chance to know, holding my hands as we wept together in that sad common room. "Why didn't Dad tell me about you?" Marcus asked. "Why didn't he ever bring me to meet you?" "It's complicated, sweetheart. Your father and we had a falling out. But it's not your fault. None of this is your fault." Marcus visited every day after that. He brought me food, helped me organize my room, read to me for hours. Most importantly, he listened as I told him about his grandfather, about the early days with his father, about our family. "Dad never talks about any of this," Marcus said one day, his voice troubled. "He acts like he doesn't have parents, like he just appeared out of nowhere. And Jessica, my stepmother, she's always been cold to me too. I thought it was just me, that I'd done something wrong." "No, honey, you haven't done anything wrong. Some people just have something broken inside them. Your father, he's always been searching for something, never satisfied with what he has. I don't know why. I tried so hard to raise him right, to teach him about love and loyalty and family. But somewhere along the way, he lost those values." Marcus squeezed my hand. "I'm here now, Grandma. I'm not going anywhere. You're not alone anymore." And he kept that promise. Marcus came every single day, sometimes bringing his girlfriend, Sarah, who was equally kind and caring. They made sure I had everything I needed, that I wasn't just surviving, but actually living. Through Marcus, I learned that Daniel and Jessica had moved to another state years ago. They'd had Marcus, raised him in their cold, distant way, and now he was in college, volunteering as part of a service learning program, which is how he'd ended up at my building. "Does your father know you found me?" I asked one day. "I told him," Marcus said quietly. "He didn't want to talk about it. Jessica said I was wasting my time with that crazy old woman. But I don't care what they think. You're my grandmother. Your family." I cried again, but this time they were tears of gratitude. After all the darkness, after all the loss and pain, this unexpected light had appeared in my life. I'm old now, older than I feel, though my body reminds me every day how many years I've lived. I can't see the world anymore, but Marcus describes it to me the changing seasons, the sky, the flowers in the building's garden. Through his eyes, I can still experience beauty. Do I forgive Daniel? I don't know. Some days, I'm angry at him for abandoning us, for poisoning Jessica against me, for keeping Marcus away all those years. Other days, I just feel sad for him, sad that he's missed out on knowing his own son properly, sad that he's chosen bitterness and distance over love and family. But forgiveness or not, I've found peace. Marcus taught me that family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who loves you even when it's difficult. Michael, my darling, if you can hear me wherever you are, I miss you every day. Thank you for the years we had together, for the love you gave me, for the strength you showed me. I'll see you again someday, and we'll walk hand in hand through whatever comes next. And to anyone listening to this story who might be going through something similar, you're not alone. Even in the darkest times, even when it feels like everyone has abandoned you, there's still light somewhere. Hold on. Keep breathing. Keep living. You never know when your own Marcus might walk through the door. My name is Alexis Thompson. I'm 82 years old, blind, living in a single room with almost nothing to my name. But I'm not alone anymore. I have my grandson. I have my memories. And I have the hope that sharing my story might help someone else feel less alone in their own darkness. Thank you for listening.